Hello again, friends and strangers. Hi strangers. Welcome to another video when we go through the decades of cinema, picking up my favorite movies. This time we're going back to the atomic age, the 1950s. So, after the end of war, the discovery of atomic power and entering the Cold War, there was a Cambrian explosion of science fiction movies in Hollywood, where our wonder of science and technology was coming hand in hand with our fear and the paranoia of the next attack. Because you see, no matter if it was aliens from outer space or monsters from the depths of the earth, there was one theme to connect many of those movies: invasion. A foreign enemy that comes to destroy our way of life. And the heroes of these movies, like in real life before, were the scientists.
Summary and progress report from Project Director Dr. Russell A. Marvin.
And Mrs. Dr. Russell A. Marvin.
They are the ones leading the army and telling them what to do.
Our best hope lies in what you people can develop to help us. All right, on the double. Get me back.
And of course, the community.
He's telling the truth.
The simple American people that band together against the invaders.
That's 12 feet thick easy.
Some of those movies are great, some of them are bad, and one is, quote-unquote, the worst movie ever made.
You have your report?
A title given to Ed Wood's Plan 9 from Outer Space from 1957. So let's talk a bit about Ed Wood. Like many people, I got introduced to him from Tim Burton's movie in 1994. He was an American director in the 50s that was making low-budget B-movies that most of them became cult classics later on due to their campiness and really low-quality standards. He was the Tommy Wiseau of the 50s, and Plan 9 from Outer Space was his room. And maybe it's because of Tim Burton's romanticized portrayal of him, but I always had a soft spot for Ed Wood.
And action!
He was a terrible filmmaker, this is without a doubt, but I think his love for cinema and his passion for making movies were equal to people like Orson Welles or even Steven Spielberg. He of course didn't have any of their talent and didn't really care about the quality of his work. Another thing about Ed Wood is that he was a cross-dresser and somewhere in the trans spectrum. And in 1953 he made a movie called Glen or Glenda.
Give this man satin undies, a dress, a sweater, and a skirt, or even the lounging outfit he has on, and he's the happiest individual in the world. He can work better, think better, he can play better, and he can be more of a credit to his community and his government because he is happy.
This is a movie that came out after the news of the first sex reassignment surgery in the US of Christine Jorgensen in 1953, and attempts to inform the viewer about the trans identity by showing different stories and featuring many trans people from the community at the time.
If the Creator had meant us to be boys, we certainly would have been born boys.
If the Creator had meant us to be born girls, we certainly would have been born girls.
Are we sure?
Ed Wood plays the titular character of Glen, Glenda, living a secret life and wanting to come out to his girlfriend, but he's afraid of the rejection.
Those fingernails have got to go.
You know, I didn't realize they're as long as they are.
My goodness, they're almost as long as mine. Maybe even prettier. We'll have to paint them sometime just for the fun of it.
We'll trim them.
That's for sure.
It's a movie about trans visibility and a plea for acceptance 70 years ago, while being full of positivity and optimism.
So hard to believe.
It's not really hard to believe. It's just hard for you to accept.
Alan had all his life acted the part of the woman. Now he is that woman and must learn how it's done. The proper walk must be adopted. A lady is a lady, whatever the case may be.
It's not a good movie, of course, we already established that. It's very poorly made, the acting is bad, the editing is terrible. And although it is 100% supportive and tries to educate the viewer about the trans identity, it's still a movie from the 50s, and all the language and terminology it uses is very wrong and very outdated. So don't watch it as an educational movie.
Let's get our story straight. You're referring to the suicide of the transvestite?
If that's the word you men of medical science use for a man who wears woman's clothing, yes.
Nevertheless, the fact that this movie exists, that Ed Wood chose to make it, and the amount of love and positivity it has, it just brings tears in my eyes. And it really deserves a place in my heart and in my list.
Anne was a very happy woman, and a woman who was eager to learn, and now was accepted by society. A woman born at the age of 24, in a world that for 24 years she had seen as a man.
You can find it here on YouTube if you want to watch it. As usual, I will have the link below, as well as some videos that talk more about the movie and Ed Wood himself.
I don't fully understand this, but maybe together we can work it out.
Back to the Cold War now. The same year as Glen or Glenda, we have The War of the World. This adaptation of H.G. Wells' classic moves the action from London to a small American town, and it has everything that defines a lot of science fiction of the era. The foreign invasion, the community coming together to fight the invaders, the hanky scientist,
That's it over there.
a woman, and of course, a better nuclear explosion than Oppenheimer. Next, The Blob.
Beware of the blob, it creeps and leaps and glides and slides.
I don't know if it's the song by Burt Bacharach in the titles, or the over-the-top bad acting, or that those people are supposed to be teenagers, but The Blob feels like a parody to me.
No, we got some rumors there'd be some unprotected women in the balcony.
In this small American town, a meteorite brings down an alien blob that grows in size the more it eats. It's cheesy, it has some great VFX for the time, and it's so 50s that you'd think it was made in the 80s. Because, you know, in the 80s they had the 50s revival, the same wave we've been having an 80s revival for the past 30 years. Next, we have another 50s sci-fi classic, The Day the Earth Stood Still.
We have come to visit you in peace and with goodwill.
This time is not an invasion, but rather a warning, as a single alien lands in Washington and tries to plead with humanity to go easy with nuclear weapons, or else.
Why doesn't the government do something? That's what I'd like to know.
What can they do? They're only people, just like us.
People my foot. They're Democrats.
Well, if you want my opinion, he comes from right here on Earth. And you know where I mean.
This is a very unique movie that, although it shares the same themes of the Red Scare and the fear of atomic power, it takes a very different approach, making it feel more like a classic Twilight Zone episode than anything else.
My name is Carpenter.
Would you care to say a few words, Mr. Carpenter? I suppose you're just as scared as the rest of us.
In a different way, perhaps. I am fearful when I see people substituting fear for reason. In fact, I would like...
Thank you, Mr. Carpenter. Thank you very much. I see another gentleman over here in the crowd.
Let's move now to the other side of the globe, and while Americans were dealing with the fear of a potential nuclear attack, Japan was still processing the trauma and aftermath of one that actually happened. Only 9 years after Hiroshima and Nagasaki, Godzilla tells the story of a monster walking and mutated by nuclear power, destroying everything in its path as a force of nature. Sure, not the most subtle metaphor, but, it's Godzilla. This is not a fun disaster movie. This is a memory. It's bleak, dark, and although it created the kaiju genre, it has very little in common with the rest of the movies that came after.
Years ago, my mother used to say to me, she'd say, in this world, Elwood, you must be, she always called me Elwood. In this world, Elwood, you must be oh so smart or oh so pleasant. Well, for years I was smart. I recommend pleasant.
Okay, we're gonna have a break from science fiction now and go into urban fantasy, I suppose, with Harvey.
After you.
Jimmy Stewart plays a quirky guy who has a not-so-imaginary friend, Harvey.
Who's Harvey?
A white rabbit, 6 feet tall.
6 feet?
6 feet 3.5 inches. Now let's stick to the facts.
His family is not having it anymore, and they are trying to commit him into a sanitarium when shenanigans ensue.
Manager, in a few minutes a man will be crossing the square. He'll be wearing a hat and a coat and carrying another one over his arms. I want you to follow him, if necessary even confront him. Quietly, of course, but at all events I want you to prevent him from returning to his house.
Oh, Alvader!
To be honest, Jimmy Stewart always creeps me out a bit, and there is some questionable, unprofessional behavior in this movie. But overall, it's a funny and sweet comedy.
But how will I recognize your friend?
Oh, you can't miss him, Mrs. Chumley. He's a puka.
A puka? Is that something new?
No. As I understand it, that's something very old.
Think of it as the Donnie Darko of the 50s, minus the time travel. Well, almost.
Did I tell you he could stop clocks?
To what purpose?
Well, Harvey can look at your clock and stop it. And you can go anywhere you like, with anyone you like, and stay as long as you like, and when you get back, not 1 minute will have ticked by.
Next, we have the first musical in my list, Singing in the Rain.
All I do is dream of you the whole night through. With the dawn I still go on dreaming of you. You're every thought, you're everything, you're every song I ever sing. Summer, winter, autumn, and spring.
I'm not a huge fan of old musicals, but if I'm gonna have one in this list, it might as well be this one.
Lena, the publicity department, Rod here, thought it would be much better if Don made all the speeches for the team.
Why? Lena, you're a beautiful woman. Audiences think you've got a voice to match. The studio's got to keep their stars from looking ridiculous at any cost.
No one's got that much money.
What's wrong with the way I talk? What's the big idea? Am I dumb or something?
I can understand anyone who finds it cringy and wants to roll their eyes at it. I did many times while watching it and wanted to quit. But then a music number would start and I was just stunned by the choreography and those people's stamina. You know, when La La Land came out and some people didn't like it and said that it's a disappointment to the movies it's supposed to pay tribute to? This is what they meant. Next, we have our first Western in our list, Johnny Guitar.
Where's the boss?
Who's asking?
The name is Johnny Guitar.
So?
I haven't talked about Westerns yet. I watched my fair share as a kid, but even then I always preferred the more stylized Westerns of Sergio Leone and later than the traditional American ones.
Down there I sell whiskey and cards. All you can buy up these stairs is a bullet in the head. Now, which do you want?
But Johnny Guitar is not a traditional Western, on the contrary, featuring not one but two strong female characters as the protagonist and the antagonist of the film, both amazing performances by Joan Crawford and Mercedes McCambridge. And being overall a commentary on masculinity and gender roles and stuff like that, if it was coming out today, it would have been called woke and trying too hard. And you know what? Sometimes it does.
Never seen a woman who was more a man. She thinks like one, acts like one, and sometimes makes me feel like a nut.
I never believed I'd end my years working for a woman. And liking it.
Taking you out of here in that dress is like carrying a lantern.
He was more.
Now tell me it was all one-sided.
No.
Continuing with westerns, The Searchers is a very difficult film to watch, and a very beautiful one. The opening scene alone, which is one of the best openings in a movie, is enough to make you fall in love with it. And as I was watching it, I was constantly wishing that I was watching a different movie.
Welcome home, Ethan.
One that follows the happy lives of this family and the reconnection with a lost relative. Seeing those kids growing up, finding love, going through life. Heck, I could even watch 2 hours of people just riding their horses through Monument Valley. Just look how beautiful it is. But no, this is instead a very sad movie. Bitter and hateful as much as its protagonist.
Wherever that tears it! No, and you stay out of this. All of you. I don't want you with me. I'll meet you for what I gotta do.
And although it is a commentary on the racism and the hate of the era it depicts, it's still a product of its time, making the same mistakes as the movies before it, and giving us no real alternative to Wayne's broken character.
And that's an order. Yes, sir. But if you're wrong, don't ever give me another.
I mean, who are we supposed to root for? Him?
You know that's grounds for divorce in Texas.
Speaking of beautiful but problematic movies, Forbidden Planet is another very iconic and influential sci-fi movie that has a lot of firsts. It's the first movie that takes place entirely on a different planet, and has the concept of faster than light travel. It's the first one to have a fully electronic soundtrack made with oscillators and such. It has the first robot character in a movie, Robbie the robot.
Hey, Doc, is it a male or female?
In my case, sir, the question is totally without meaning.
And it's probably the first time you'll see Leslie Nielsen with black hair. It's also clearly an inspiration for Star Trek, although Gene Roddenberry denied it, but come on.
United Planets cruiser C-57D. Now more than a year out from Earth base on a special mission to the planetary system of the great main sequence star, Altair.
Everything is here. The semi-military organization that explores the planets and answers to distress signals, the technology, the technobabble, the aesthetics. The whole movie actually plays like a classic Star Trek episode.
I'm Commander Adams. This is Lieutenant Farman, my executive, and Lieutenant Astro, our ship's doctor.
And it has some of the best visual effects on this decade and probably most of the next. From miniatures and amazing matte paintings to stop motion and 2D animation, this movie employs all the tricks in the book to produce a spectacle that looks incredible even today. Imagine seeing this in the cinema in 1956. The only big negative is its profound sexism and all the chauvinistic behavior towards the only teenage woman in the movie.
But don't you understand, Alta? No. Well, look at yourself. You see, you can't run around like that in front of men, particularly not a space wolf like Farman. So for Pete's sake, go home and put on something that'll, anything.
I mean, every time Anne Francis is on the screen, the movie is like it's been written by horny teenagers.
Knock that off, Quinn.
It goes out of its way just to be offensive, and it really subtracts from the enjoyment of the movie, but if you can manage to ignore those parts and not throw up, there is a lot to love.
I can see that was probably very clever, but I don't seem to understand it.
Well, there's no rush.
So these are my 10 favorite movies from the 50s. Overall, I really enjoyed rewatching all those movies. I think I had more fun than any other decade so far. As usual, check down the description for any useful link. Say hi in the comments if you like, and yeah, see you in the next one. Hopefully soon, because I still have a lot of 60s movies to watch. Bye!